You got the
We
music?
are live. Yeah, it's not playing, ma. It's all good. We're live. So we just gonna bebop in our head. I'll always love my
Love my
mama.
mama, 'cause she's my
She's my
favorite
favorite
girl.
girl. Boop, 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 boop. Yes. Hello. Yes, and welcome into the throne room. It's been a while, everybody. We have not seen you guys for a couple of weeks. A lot of things has happened in between. In the meantime, I'm going to give everyone a chance to just jump on in the room as me and mom go ahead and do what we know to do, which is to like and share and do what calls us to do here on this platform. Um, Mommy, you feeling good?
I'm fine. It's just I'm grateful to have invited our listeners into our private conversations.
She's made it a long way, y'all, a long way. So we thank you, for, mommy, for being willing and to be open and transparent about. Uh-oh, the thing is coming on. Being open and transparent about where we are and sharing intimately what we talk about on a regular basis. So today, y'all. It's that time. Mama don't always know best. We're going to kick off that conversation right here in the throne room, the space that we have created for us to be able to come and purge from our issues, heal from our wounds, and find rest so that we can transform into that which we have been called and created to become. And you all know what that is. That is royalty. My name is Monica Jackson. I am your host, and today with me, my wonderful, beautiful co host. This would not actually happen without her. I mean, none of this. Even me, I wouldn't be in existence if it wasn't for her. My wonderful and beautiful mother, Minister Deborah Ively Chandler, is right here to the side of me, and she's excited to be able to begin this conversation with me. So, mommy, the last time we were together, the last time right before we did our reunion, whoop, whoop, to the anniversary that we just celebrated 1 year in the throne room and having these candid conversations, yay to us. But the last time we had this talk, we had a real deep conversation. We were talking about mamas and parenting and not always knowing the right way to go. We were talking about, our ability to show up shame. We were talking about being exposed. And we talked about that we as parents, we don't show up as parents apart from our stuff. And that we
Yes.
give to our children the things that we carry, whether it be through our DNA. I remember when I was little, it used to say, "Oh, it's in your genes," and I used to look down in my pants and say, "I don't got nothing in my genes."
Yes, because that's what my mother told me. It's in your genes.
In your genes. So from our DNA or through our just behavior, our actions, right? Our daily one-to-one actions. And so today we're going to continue this conversation as we talk about it's not easy to love, right? Loving is not easy. And one of the things that we had also talked about the last time we ended off in our conversations, we spoke about um, broken relationships, right? And we talked about those broken relationships and having the ability to be restored. So we talked about what restoration looked like, um, and in that conversation, we talked about although we might be guilty, right, and even though we might have done wrong and we wronged people in man's eyes, we talked about having the opportunity each day to be able to do this thing all over again. That there was a way for us to be able to heal and restore and transform those relationships that were once broken, lost, or even seemingly unreconcilable. And so we talked about how can we do things differently? How can we break bad habits? How can we understand our children in different ways, really seeing that their worlds are not our worlds and they're not going to be us and they're not supposed to be. And we talked about even, I think you made an analogy the last time we spoke about, when our kids do something, we oftentimes say, oh my God, why are my kids doing this to me? Why would they do this to me? How come they're hurting me so badly? And you really talked about us not really personalizing it in that way as far as being offended by what they do. And I think today
Mhm.
I really wanted to talk a little bit more about what that looks like as we look into what it means to be a steward, right? A steward and a, a steward in a position that says that I'm willing to take on a risk, right? A risk of doing it wrong, a risk of being rejected, just even the risk of saying, you know what, I messed up and I might not even know how to do it and I don't know how to fix it. And so we take a risk. But the in its totality, it's trying to figure out where do we go from here. So we know that it's not done, right? We know that it's not an easy road, and we know that we have another opportunity to do it again. So mom, give us some insights into what that all meant as we begin this conversation going forward, and loving isn't easy.
Well, the first thing I want to address is that concept of restoration. Um, that
Mhm.
restoration has implies that there was a point in this specific relationship that everything was functioning the way it should have, and oftentimes that's not the case.
Mm,
So we have to think about what we're returning to. When we talk about the offenses that may be taken at the actions that that may be the child, the behavior that the child may be displaying, or the and we assume that this behavior is because they are taking offense. We look at it as if it's something that we haven't done correctly as the parent, from the parent
right.
perspective, because we're taking on the weight that we are somehow totally responsible for the actions or inactions of the child. However, we have to understand that we are dealing with a human, a separate person, a person that's on
Mm,
their own journey in their developmental process. Certain things about them, because they too have a free will, and they are trying to find their way. And in
right.
the process of them finding their way, it may, at some point, especially when they start to enter into an adolescence, we start to butt heads. Butt heads not because they're
Mm,
trying to offend us, that we're taking the
right.
personal offense, but butting heads because they're trying to discover who they are and become independent in that thing. And sometimes,
Mm,
culturally, one of the problems that we have is that I'm sorry. One of the
nope,
problems
that's
that we
fine.
have in our culture is there may be culturally some things that are legitimately an issue,
Right.
legitimately deficits that we are dealing with, and because of that, we struggle. We
Mm,
struggle to give them the direction and the guidance that they needed, um, and we fall short, often fall short because we are, as we talked about before, dealing with our own issues, the baggage, the trauma of our
yeah.
childhoods, and the pains of decisions and things that have been done to us. And we are working out and functioning and trying to rear children out of that. We may have every good intention to enter into this parenting relationship, um,
Mm,
and show up as parents and provide all the best things that life has to offer, and to give all the direction. I know that's the how I enter in, even though it wasn't a two-parent household, and sometimes, most of the time, for us, it's not that way, because
right.
we have not sat down and planned this. We find ourselves in these situations, and then we proceed with it. And when we do, and when in the process of doing that, we are learning, because again, we
Right.
may not have connected the dots and don't have all the resources at our available to us, or the wisdom, because
Mm,
again, we're dealing in the with the relationship between with the parent, the mother, the father. We're still
right.
struggling with that layer, and that layer prevents us often from showing up in the relationship the way we need to show up.
Wow. Yeah. That's
And
good,
when
mom.
that happens, hurt happens, neglect
Mm,
happens. Was it our intent to be hurtful and neglect and not provide
No.
beyond the material, because we say, oh, I'm giving you the material, I've done this, I've done that. But then there's another layer of what's more important, because when we talk about the hierarchy of needs, what is the first, the primal needs that a person needs? They need that love,
Love.
to feel that
Mm-hmm.
belonging, the sense of
Belonging.
belonging, and feel cared for beyond, yes, there's the immediate, the food, the clothing, and the shelter, which we kind of, want to deal with that. So we can grasp hold, a lot of us, to that. Some of us even struggle with that aspect. But the thing that money can't buy.
That's
That's why last week when we were talking about loving ain't easy, because we can't buy that. And it can't,
Right.
and you can't manufacture it, because the other feels that feels beneath the surface, whether it's genuine or not.
Yeah,
Because
that's
certain
good.
behaviors have to go along with that, and you can say it, I love you, I loved you, I loved you, I've done this, but the feeling of being loved,
Yeah.
and as a parent, it needs to come from us.
Yeah. Yeah, that's good. We want to thank our listeners for jumping in here and taking the time with us this afternoon. If you have any questions or comments, please feel free to drop them in the comment box. We like to have your interaction during this time, but we're going to be talking about how loving ain't easy as parents and even as children toward our parents, because oftentimes we become offended by some of the things that our parents do. And as parents, we become offended by some of the things that our children do, and we take on this thought process that, they're supposed to show up the way in which we want them to show up. And sometimes it is, I'll say not sometimes, it is not that they're supposed to show up as we would want them to, but as for this conversation and as we go forward, the way in which God has called them to show up as. One of the things that I am going to set a foundation in this conversation for is this is a conversation between me and my mommy. And the foundation that we have between her and I is that we show up to our conversations in our fullness, understanding our own individual identities that have been rooted and grounded in faith. And so you might not identify with everything that we say here today, but what we would hope is that the information that we share, that you guys will be able to take hold of that information and see it inside of whatever situations that you're going through or what's going on in your lives, to be able to identify it and figure out ways to be able to move yourselves forward in whatever it is that you're experiencing as well. Mommy, is there anything else that you would like for me to add to this, or you would like to add to that part of the process?
Yes. I want to say this, because in dealing with, from perspective, looking at our relationship and the things that we struggled with or worked our way through, a lot of it had to do with, for me as mom, is for me making an appropriate assessment of what my role was and is as mother. Defining my limitations. Yeah, defining my limitations and recognizing that I am not God to you. I can't, that I am making sure that I am not giving you the impression that everything I say and the way that I'm functioning and the way that I'm moving, that I am in the mode, I am perfected, the know-it-all in the situation. And one of the things I had to grapple with is the fact of respecting you, even as a child, as a person.
That's deep.
And seeing yourself and seeing in you a personality that was developing, and the way God had created you, looking and trying to identify the giftings that God had given you. And instead of looking at the faults, and the times where you may have faltered, from my perspective, may not have been from your perspective or even from God's perspective. But when I saw you not following certain
Standards,
predefined God,
rituals, protocols, those,
yes,
those
that I had to recognize that God had created you unique and had
Right.
planted in you a uniqueness and those traits and certain attributes. And I did recognize certain things because I said those to you readily, that these
Yes.
things that are such a nemesis to me
Get on my
are
nerves.
are God's gift to the world. This is something that the world is going to need. God gifted you in that way, and I needed to nurture it in you. However, I knew I was going to have some problems.
Yes.
It was presenting some problems for me because it caused me to have to deal with me. And
Mm.
I had to step out of my own feelings and emotions about this thing
You
and
mean
try
get
to
out
see
your feelings?
I had to
Get
get out
out
of those
your
feelings.
feelings.
Or better yet, let me say, even in those feelings,
Good, Mom.
allow myself push past the feelings of the moment and see
Mm.
why, understand why I was feeling this level of discomfort, and
Yeah.
why I was struggling to the degree that I was struggling, as a woman of faith, and go to God, and say,
Yeah.
God, how can I best deal with this situation?
Yeah. Yeah. Is your computer, is it connected? Is it dying, Mom? Don't worry. It's all good. So Jessica, we want to say hey to you, Queen. Jessica says to us, it's okay to apologize to our children, even as parents. And Jessica, I will say to you, absolutely 100% right.
Absolutely.
That as parents, we oftentimes think that because we have the parental role that we are, the authority gives us the right to just push on our children any of our thoughts, our concepts, our ways of doing life, when in fact that we might not have it all right, that mama and daddy don't always know best. And so that's a great point to point out, that we as parents should apologize to our
And
children.
there's
Mom,
another aspect to that. There's another
mm-hmm,
aspect too, because we may be in a correct position,
right.
but we have to understand that our children are still developing. Their understanding of the world and our position as guides and stewards.
Right.
And so that we are to impart the wisdom. And so when their scripture talks about warns, gives a caution to the parents to about how they discipline and how they instruct their children, that we
Mm,
too are not to drive them and offend, and become an offense to them, because there's
mm.
a way in which we can give that information and do the guiding without lauding it over their head and tearing them down.
That's good. That's good.
We have to guide them into seeing it and to open it up, treat them as people,
Mm,
and walk with them to a point of understanding. They don't have to always accept it, but we have to be cautious of how we give that guidance and direction.
that's a good. I think that's a good segue for me to talk about something that, as I had an opportunity to scroll through social media and I was looking at some things that I saw. What I find often is that social media has become a therapeutic platform for many to be able to voice their
Yes.
concerns, their hurts, their feelings, to be able to take on an identity or take off an identity, to show up in a boldness that they would not have
Yeah.
necessarily shown up as,
Absolutely.
to be able to communicate in ways, fearless ways that they may not have necessarily shown up in the world itself as. And so, as I had an opportunity to interact with some things that people have been saying, I came across this post, um, and it said, "I've been quiet way too long. I'm telling my story the right way. This same," and we use all kind of words here, "ran my name through the mud for years. Guess what? The truth hurts. I'm done sweeping the truth under the rug for all for a B to hide behind the church. One thing I know for sure is you don't play with God. I may not be right, but I damn sure ain't wrong. Anything I say, I can prove. I have years of proof. My parents failed me tremendously. I forgive, and now I will tell the truth and shame the devil. When I saw that, um, my heart went out to her
Mhm.
for multiple reasons. I even like
Layers
sat
of
with that.
pain.
Yeah, I sat with it, and there was so much more to that. Even all the way down to the parents and their responses, and they're not saying, I tried to make it right, and you weren't hearing me, and all of the different things that were consumed inside of that interaction that was made for everybody, exposed for the world to see. All I could see was the pain that sat within the hearts of those who were in the midst of it. And I want to lift that up today as we talk about it. Loving isn't easy. And I think that that comes from multiple different aspects, that loving isn't easy from the standpoint of child. It isn't easy as standpoint from mother, and as community, as father. Uh, we want to address this and kind of break this down a little bit, because I think that this resonates not just from one person. That I know when I read this, that there have been times where I might have felt my parents failed me tremendously, right? When I
Mhm.
read this, I heard some of my own family members inside of that. I heard some of the community and people who I speak to on a regular basis. I even heard some of my own children in that, right? And so I want to be able to take this time and this opportunity to open up the dialogue that kind of talks about what it was that we just read about. Mommy, what did you feel when I first read that to you and said I wanted to talk about that thing?
I felt multiple layers of pain
Yeah.
when from the perspective when the writer was writing this post. I
Yeah.
felt her pain. And then when I heard the line, from years of dragging my name through the
Through the
mud,
mud. Mm,
that dragging through the mud was I felt the pain of the parents.
yeah.
Because what may have been perceived as dragging through the
Dragon
mud
was a
could
cry
have
for
been
help.
absolutely the
Was a cry
parents
for help.
crying out. They didn't have Facebook
Yeah.
or
That's good,
Twitter
Mom.
or one of those other forums to be on to be a screen where they could go on and put all of their words out. They didn't have it. We don't know the dynamics of the relationship and
No.
exactly what went on. But we do know that there's two
Pain.
sides to every coin, two
Right.
sides to every story. And the other layer of pain I heard was hiding behind the church.
Yes. Yes.
The only avenue that we have had as a culturally different cultures as a people, our escape. We say take it to God.
Right.
And we go to church, which has become another way to anesthetize
Self-soothe.
ourselves.
Right. We self-soothe, and we figure out other ways to medicate through
Yeah,
the
that's
things.
another form of self-medication. We go to
Mm-hmm.
church and we praise God and fall out and shout and try to relieve ourselves of the burden, and the tears flow because nobody else can understand it, because we don't want to tell the
The story.
story. We don't want to share all of the hurt and the layers. And sometimes what we thought was dragging us through the mud was really, I love
Exposing.
you in a
Mm,
way of, maybe if you hear this, you'll stop.
yeah.
Maybe if you hear this, and maybe because I don't know, and neither do you, because we are not
Right.
inside and internally. So I don't want to, in any way,
Assume.
seem to minimize it, because the first thing I want to do is validate the writer,
Yeah.
because if for them this was real experience, the pain and
Yeah.
the hurt of it, whether perceived or correctly or not,
Yeah.
is real. And the
Yeah.
thing that needs to be validated is the fact that her feelings, regardless,
We
are her
heard you.
feelings.
Yeah,
Her,
we
his,
heard
it's a
you.
real issue, and we heard
Yeah,
you.
we
We
heard
heard
you.
you, and we feel the pain that you felt, because in order to be driven to the point, and you needed to do this,
Right.
because we need to get it out, because we hold it in and it festers. The thing though, the parents need to hear the level of pain, because they may not have recognized the degree to which this pain was built up. They may have just seen the manifestation of behaviors and not be able to understand or connect
Stand.
to the root of it.
Right.
And that's, as a parent, we're in, sometimes generationally, we can't connect, we can't relate. We think because we created this environment and we've shown them church and shown them about, told them about God, that when we put them in, release them to the world, that they're going to be in a bubble. Remember, I thought that.
Right.
They're going to be in a bubble and protected. We prayed with them before they went outside to school, and we trusted that it was all going to be well. But as an
Right.
individual on a journey, with a free will to make decisions and make mistakes and encounter life, on a journey with God, we have to recognize that pain is inevitable. In this life,
Right.
there will be trials
And
and
tribulations.
tribulations. But what do we do when it occurs?
Yeah. That's
What is this
good.
response we give? And I think about the parents. I don't know where they are on their faithful journey. I
Yeah.
don't know, but I do know the frustration, because we are in our different religious traditions. There's a whole lot said about what we should do and how we should behave, and shaming and everything else, and that goes with that. And
Yeah.
so the inappropriate, seemingly inappropriate responses to a child in the process of becoming. Our
Right.
responses may not always seem fitting, because we have been told that we should do it this way. When we might be thinking about doing one thing, you need to beat that, blah, blah, blah. You should do this and you
Mm-hmm.
should do that, because people tell us that you should have done that. Why are you taking this? And why you should let this kid run your life and tell you. And so
Mm-hmm.
instead of listening to what our children are experiencing, um, we try to follow what tradition has told us. Spare the
Or
rod.
I want to add another part to that too, or out of guilt because we know that we failed to show up appropriately. We allow our
Absolutely.
children to go and do as they want to because we feel like we aren't doing what we're
Who are we to
supposed
say
to.
when we've done
Yeah,
whatever?
yeah. And both ends are very detrimental to the growth of not just the child, but to us as parents as well.
Yes. Um, that that part happens. I mean, there was a generation of parents, and it depends upon how the age, it involves children parenting children,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
or being absent because of the inability with the lack of the skill set. At that age, I'm not supposed to be equipped to handle the weight
Handle
of
it.
this responsibility. So I didn't show up maybe the way the child would have expected me to, because
Yeah.
I was still in the process of developing myself, and I just got caught up in life. So
Yeah.
many parents, drug addicted.
I think that
Um,
was the situation in this case too. There was a lot of drug addiction issues and things like that that happened. And although we say we forgive, there there really is an unforgiveness that still lingers there, and there's some resentment because we feel as children that we missed out on a life that we could have had because of our parents' inability to be parents and show up responsibly to the occasion, right?
and
To
we
what they've been steward over.
and our pain. We blame our pain. Like, if you had been there to do what you were supposed to as a parent, I
This
wouldn't have
wouldn't
had to
be.
go through all of this stuff. And so I'm damaged, and I've made wrong decisions because I've contributed to this myself, and
Yeah,
I'm not taking up full ownership, because at a certain point, especially when we're talking about this coming from adult children,
yeah,
um, we have to start to take ownership. Yes, our parents may not have shown up in the way they should have shown up for us. Maybe they
Yeah.
were distracted. Maybe they weren't drug addicted. Maybe they were just so involved with ministry and whatever in the church,
Right.
that they didn't have time for us to really hear our concerns because they were so involved with saving the world. How many times we've heard that?
A lot.
And you don't have time for me. You didn't have the time. And so you left me to be governed. We just did whatever because you weren't there, showing up the way we felt that you should have shown up, because you weren't able to discern correctly the God's leading and direction because of pressures that have been put on us. Which is why we really have to recognize and understand this role of parenting, that stewardship portion and ministry, and bring about that balance. We don't do it in spite of our children and make what they have to do. Oh my God, I missed your meeting. I don't have time for this. Somebody else is going to have to do that for you. I know that we have a passion for God, and we yearn to be obedient to what he's calling us to do. And it brings us joy because we want to please him. But his response, his call to us was to first go to our homelands and to deal with those responsibilities. And then how do we balance those? We have to begin to be very prayerful about that, recognizing the impact that we have on the lives of those who are closest to us.
Yeah, I think, hi, Auntie. We see you down there. Thank you for joining us, and we appreciate everyone's willingness to be in this conversation with us as we talk about the pain and the hurt that it is to love our children and to love our parents, even in their issues, because it isn't easy.
Both
And
sides,
so,
right?
yeah,
Parenting issues, children having issues being children because the parent could do all the right things. Now, this is the other thing that you might have. You said there may be a backstory to this person who wrote in, and legitimately the backstory exists, and that there was the shortcomings on the behalf of the parents' inability to show up as parents in the lives of this child. Did they at some later date go to church and say you're hiding behind the church? I don't, like I said, there are layers to that.
right,
Are we justifying what we do? Because they could have had that habit and then come to the church and been very zealous in their
right.
ministries. And so we don't know why the child is feeling the way that the level of resentment they feel. But we have to also recognize that even in those feelings, a lot of times what the child is bringing to it is another layer of, I want to do this other thing that I want to do.
So I'm going to stop you right there because this brought something to mind, Mom, right? So oftentimes as children, we think that it's almost as if we're seeing church and all these other things as something that can magically wave a wand and can fix things that are going on in our lives, and that the people who go to church automatically are somehow like these super saints who ain't done nothing, and that they're
Or
supposed
have
to
no
show up
struggles.
imperfect,
They don't
right?
have
Like
any
they're,
struggles. They're not dealing
yeah,
with anything.
yeah,
That they
like
got
they're,
to show up perfect at every moment.
yeah. And so that's my so that's one thing that I wanted to kind of bring to the forefront of this conversation is the fact that just because we go to church doesn't mean that we're exempt from sin or sin leaves our lives. We go to church as a way to help us continue on the journey
To
and
deal
to
with
be in
these
community.
issues that we have, because we
Yes,
all have issues.
yes, yes, yes.
But the thing is but the point is, we got to get to the point to acknowledge that we got these issues and don't try
Mm,
to show up for our children as if we perfected.
that's it.
And see, that's
Yes,
where some of the conflict comes, because we got our issues. Our children may see our issues because they live with our issues, but we're
yes.
trying to show up and respond in their lives as if we don't. And then they start seeing the hypocrisy of what we're doing. Even in our sincerity of dealing with it, they say, you're such a hypocrite.
Oh
Because
yeah.
when we come home, they're not
They see the
feeling,
realness. They see
well,
you for who you is, right? Like that's
but I don't know, but do they? Monica, are
Well,
they
yeah.
really seeing us for who we are?
No, because they don't see the inward battles that we have, but they see
Absolutely.
you and the way in which you've
They see
learned
our
how to
weaknesses.
respond. Yes, how you've
They
learned
see
to
the weaknesses
respond to
that
things.
the other people in the world may not see because they're not behind the closed doors with us.
Right.
And so we become human behind those doors. And then they start to see us responding and getting upset and saying some not so nice words.
Oh, you got the cussing in you? We get the
Got
cussing in
some
you.
cussing in you.
Oh, yeah, we got
Because you get frustrated with them, how we start to respond, how we socialize, because we got them two sets of friends.
Yeah. Yeah.
And what happens on the holidays and different times on the weekends or whatever else. They see us in all of that. And they can't, because we have made, let me say this, we put God over here and us and our living over here. We think we can pick our religion up and put our religion down.
Religion down. Right.
And we have presented a false religion to our children.
Yes. Or, mommy, I'll even extend that to the focus of we tell them, go sit over there, it's none of your business. And we keep them secluded from them getting to know that the worlds actually do mesh, but in their mind, because you haven't explained properly the ways in which to interact and be in relationship,
Yes.
they don't
And
understand
how to show
how
up
to,
in the world. So they show
right.
up in hypocritically. They think that, oh, I'm supposed to do it on, it's the religion is on the outside. I carry the Bible, I dress a certain way, and I go over here and I act like this. And then when I go out on the street, this is how I am, whatever. They don't understand that we don't lay our religion down, that it's Christ in you.
Right.
In me,
In us.
in me. There's nowhere that I can go that separates that. I am in the process of becoming, just as they are in the process of becoming. I am maybe I'm at a different, more advanced state because of my maturity level in this thing, but it's my job to bring you forward. You may not understand everything that I'm saying to you.
Right.
But a problem becomes because a lot of times we try to give this information to our children at a later date. So that in this situation with this person who wrote in, at what point did the parents start to hide behind the church? Was it always that? Because we know that there are church leaders who have addiction issues.
Right.
Not just substance abuse.
All kinds.
Okay. We know that they fall short. And that's the reason why so many young people don't even want to come to church, or pushed away from any aspect of religion. The very thing they may need, they are prevented from accessing because we have become stumbling blocks, because we have not fully embraced who we are in Christ. We have been traditionalized.
Right.
And secularized. And because of it, our misunderstandings about who we are in Christ has hurt a generation. We have been hurt by it too. It's been passed down, but we have to come to a new understanding of what it means to be a Christian, what it means to be a follower. It's not just going sitting into church on Sunday. Blessed is the parent who understands that I have to allow my child to see God outside of the church building. I need to allow my child to see God in the schoolwork, see God on the ball field, to know that God is with them in the cafeteria, on the street, on the date. And we have to be able to enable them to see it. But see, the problem, we don't see it ourselves. So we can't, when we say mama don't always know best. No, because we're learning. And until we are able to walk in the newness of this renewed mind and get a new and a different understanding, a new take on this thing, and recognize what we have done to our children, and don't always take everything that the children recognize that the parent is a person, an individual with strengths and weaknesses, and we stop trying to show up as the strong person that got it all together, and be real. Yes, I've done, and then to acknowledge where we've fallen short.
Yes.
I was
Yeah.
wrong. I think it was you said, Jessica,
Jessica
put a
said it.
note, it's
Yeah.
okay to say I'm sorry.
Sorry.
I did
Yeah.
you wrong. I did
Yeah.
you a disservice. And I want you
Yeah.
to know that what I did was wrong. And I
Yeah.
recognize that what I did, how I did it, how I was moving at that time was wrong. But because I
And that
was
it caused
wrong,
pain. Yeah.
yes, and you were hurting from it.
Yeah.
And you maybe you have not gotten over this thing because I'm still in the midst of my hurt, trying to function my way through the stuff that life has done to me, and maybe I'm not through it yet.
Yeah. Yeah. One of the things that you said a little back ago, you were talking about overall, like us sharing our stories and things that we normally experience as children and trying to expose those things and wanting others to be able to hear the story. What came to mind was about the need for community not to stand in a judgmental space, but to stand in the space of support, to be able to stand in the space that offers something to the family, to those individuals, and to those children that can help them move past the pain, for them to be able to identify what it is that they need in order to become a little bit more whole. And I know that's easier said than done, right, Mom? I'm bringing this out because I think that we miss community, and that when we talk about the church, the reason why there's so much hurt in that, talking about we're hiding behind the church, is because the church hasn't shown up in the way that it should show up to the family dynamic. And maybe that's what's missing in all of this, is that we have to begin as leaders of the church community to begin to say, are we really showing up to the families the way that we should be, for the sake of them being able to identify who they are in Christ? Maybe we're lacking in that area, and which is why it seems hypocritical. I don't know. It's just something that came to
No,
my
and I
mind.
think that's an excellent point because even in the way a lot of churches structure their programming, it's pulling parents and spouses, if they're not all together in that, it's forcing them to go through and just put up, I can't wait till it's time to get out of here.
Mm-hmm.
You got to come back to this program. You got to go to this program. You got to be here. And we don't, and if we don't want to, okay, I can't do this to the kids. So y'all just stay home and entertain yourself. We'll be back in a little bit.
Yeah.
It's pulling
Yeah.
parent families apart. The way even we offer these programs and the need to do these programs,
Programs.
you
Why?
know, because how we're visualizing church because we gotta raise the funds. We say it's about
Absolutely.
it's Women's Day and Men's Day and all these things, but is it really, is that really what God is calling
What God's
us to
calling
do?
us to. Yeah.
Are we doing more things? Are we being considerate of the fact that there's a family that needs to be together? Maybe we need to restructure this thing or design this program that's more inclusive of the parents interacting with their children, because that's another
Right.
aspect. Because of the generational things, we may want to, but we don't really know how to interact and have these conversations with our children. We
Yeah.
don't know how to connect with them. It's so hard because even the kids are afraid to come to us and talk about things that are really going on. We
Yeah.
see them engaged in a way, and instead of trying to reach understanding, we're trying to reprimand instead of trying
Mm-hmm.
to get to a place of understanding so that we could redirect
Act like we
them.
know it all. Right.
Yeah, and it keeps coming back to that, thinking we always know best.
I
And so,
Oh, that was good, mommy. So you brought it to something that I wanted to say. So I remember when, so the last time we talked, and you made mention of relationship shifts, right? And you talked about that our relationship didn't always start here, but that as we moved along in our communication and as we grew individually, our relationship has become a lot more, I want to say, reciprocal in nature, whereby we both show up equally unequal but equal, right? Like you're my mama and I respect everything that you say, but I'm also your daughter and you respect what I have to say. And we come not bearing any type of particular hat, but we come with a loving type of conversation that says we're both seeking. And then on top of that is when you say, if you push back on something I say, I'm not taking it offensively because I know that you genuinely love me and that you really want me to see something greater than what it is that I'm bringing to the table. And I think that those types of conversations um, are hard to really harness in a parental relationship. So I guess how do we break it down so that a parent can then become the parent who says, I'm open to receive what you have to say and even with your stuff because I'm not perfected, right? And you could say I'm
Never
not
am I.
perfected either, right? But we come to this thing knowing that there's a common goal and that we're looking to do better and to be greater than what we were yesterday or even the minute before the conversation started. So what are some of the thought processes as I think about what the girl was saying? My parents failed me tremendously. That just sticks with me. I want to be able to say something, but I don't have anything to say but say,
What happens now is you can't leave it at the parents
right,
because it's not left with them. And so, rightfully so. And so they say, okay, yes, we failed you. So where does that leave you?
right. That's my point.
You have to go be able to assess yourself. So now where you are owning, you have to own these feelings.
Mm-hmm.
You have to own the hurt that you're feeling and make a determination of who I am and who I want to be. I don't know if she has children.
Right. Yes.
Okay. Because what I found is so many people are pointing the fingers at how their parents didn't show up for them,
But they
but they are
did. Yeah.
parents themselves and
Mm-hmm.
they are not showing up half as good as their parents have showed up for them. And so
Right.
I'm concerned about that generation that's coming
Right.
because we are blaming our parents for what happened. And I'm not minimizing it. That
No.
all these things may legitimately have happened. They hurt, and I hurt that it happened to them. It was not right. But at the
Yeah.
same time, in order to move on and show up in the world in a way that's going to be healthy for us, in order for the healing to occur, we have to recognize who we are, where we are, who we are called to be, and where we want to go.
Right.
Do I want to stay here and just marinate in the fact that, oh, my parents didn't do me right, so I'm drinking all this. This one did this to me, so I'm smoking all of this. This one did this to me, and I'm going to just be this, and I'm going to show up better for my kids or whatever else. Because when you think you're going to show up better, if you're
You don't.
harnessing that underlying thing,
You
what
become that thing
happens?
which you hate the most.
You become it, and in the minute your child, do you know when the realization comes? When your child
Your child looks you in the face.
starts to not respond the way you thought they should respond, then you start hearing yourself being your parent. It
Or
was
they say,
easy.
we're just like you.
Yeah. And then you start, what?
Huh?
What?
That ain't how I act.
I was acting like that? I was
Yeah,
doing it?
yeah.
See, we have to really take a look at not live in the past of what happened to us, but
Mm,
begin to look and see ourselves in the future, who we want to
yeah,
become.
yeah.
The beauty of Christianity is that God is always calling us to higher, and that it's
Right.
never too late for us to begin to move in a different way, to say we're sorry, and to move
Mm,
on. To whether a person accepts it or not, the only thing we can do is humble ourselves in recognition of where we've fallen short. The scripture talks about repenting,
repentance. I was just
right?
going to say that. True
And
repentance, the turning.
redemption
Hmm.
and knowing that I can come and show up better the next time.
This time.
I know that
Yeah,
I can show up better. I know
yeah.
that that's the thing that I should be holding on to, the fact that I am able to show up better as long as I have breath in my body. but I still want to deal with this individual who is still got so much of life ahead.
Yeah. Young.
To be able to connect, and this is where the people in the community, and I don't know who she's connected to, because unfortunately what we do is we normally start to
Stay in the
connect
same.
ourselves in environments that keep us in our pain. We want somebody to agree with
Validate
us,
us. And
validate
tell us,
us, and
me
then, yeah, you're
too.
right.
And
Come on, let's continue to go out here, sis, and do this and do that. Because
and
who
I
else?
know
We ain't
them
got
too,
nobody
and
else.
they did that too, and and we stay in the cycle.
And because too, we start to, even because in of our trauma, we start to have
Self-pity.
or our self-image has been affected
Yeah.
because of it.
Yeah.
And we are the shame of our parents and how we were reared, and all of those things are showing up, and we are not able to disconnect from the shame and the pain.
Yeah.
That's a big one, especially when the hurt that somebody, we trusted these people and we put our all in them, we looked up to them, and then they turn around and failed us. When they fail us like that, they rip themselves away, then we go and try to create new community. And I think we mentioned this before, then we try the gangs and different other these new communities that we connect with, and they're not in the position to give us what they need, because there are a whole bunch of hurting people that group themselves together. As a church, when we talked about the church not showing up the way it needs to, that we need to start putting together family programs that bring families together, opportunities for siblings to interact positively with each other, with their parents, and more fun recreational ways that show God differently.
Yeah.
Instead of him as the father that wants to beat them and whip them into shape, because we are called to exemplify Christ to our children. As well as in our ministries to the people we come into contact with. That's what we're called to show up that way in their lives. And it is not loving and easy.
Ain't easy.
Because we got to put ourselves on the back burner sometimes and be still and shut down our pain. When you were talking about you and I, and some and things that have happened with us in conversations, I remember the thing that I learned to do was to shut up. Let you speak and tell your truth, to be still. And as you were telling that truth, instead of being judgmental of you and of myself, to try to hear God. God, what are you saying? What do you want me to do in this moment? What do you want? And at the end of and sometimes I did not have, because I don't have all the answers. I did not know what to say. And I say, okay, fine. Because I know there were some instances, we talked about that earlier, where I was so caught up, and you had your emotions fine, and I had my feelings fine, and we was all fine together. But the end that we really wanted was the same.
Yeah.
But we could not connect to get the thing that we wanted. And this child, regardless of showing up to shame the devil, I'm going to put the truth out there to shame the devil. And whose truth is that? That's the other thing.
Right. And is it really shaming?
Yeah.
Or is it elevating?
Yeah. But the thing is, when you're really, that's really a cry to really want this relationship to be different.
Yeah.
Even when it's saying, I don't want it. Yes, you do. Because if you didn't want it, you wouldn't have been posting that.
Yeah, and you wouldn't try to expose it. There's the story, the story there. It wouldn't be as powerful as it is if it wasn't
the
something
parents
you
on the other
desired.
side could be angry about the fact that you would put it out there like that.
You want them
but at
to
the
be.
same time, yeah, you're trying to hurt, but beneath the surface of the hurt, they're like not at a wit's end as not to know how to really connect back. Nobody knows how to connect. And so instead of connecting, everybody's getting on the defensive. They're going to try to defend themselves. The child tries to defend themselves, and we fail to, even as adults. And this is why there's so many adults estranged from their children. It's because we're still trying to hold our ground. Everybody's standing their ground. I'm going to expose you.
Oh, they're going to respect
drag
me.
your name through the mud. Everybody's gonna do it to somebody else and say whatever else, but instead of stepping back, when you look at the backstory, there's stuff
we all done.
on every
We all
side.
done. Yeah.
We've all
Kid.
fall short.
Yeah.
We've all
So
fallen
how do we
short.
get back? Well, it's sad that our time is coming to an end because this conversation can continue from so many different angles. However, I am happy to know that it doesn't end here, that we get an opportunity to continue to do this thing together, that we can come back in another 2 weeks after our brother Ned next week comes on and has his barbershop conversations, that we get to come back here again the following week after that and continue this conversation on Mama Don't Always Know Best, and being able to talk about ways in which we show up to our parental responsibilities and as we show up as children to our parents. One thing that I do want to do is I just I'm lifting up everyone, and I said this earlier to my mom as before we got on here, that my heart is out here for the young person who wrote that note. And I'm wanting to lift up everyone who's out here who's struggling in some way with their parental relationship, and who's struggling with their children relationship, and who really desires for their children to show up, and for who desires to show up to their children but don't know how.
It's
It
frustrating
Yeah, and
because
it
you don't
breaks my
want
heart.
the relationship to be broken. And even when we talk
Yeah,
tough, we're
we
not
really
wanting the
don't.
relationship to be like this, but
Yeah,
we don't know how to bring it back.
yeah, yeah. So we're lifting up those individuals who are struggling, who are in that situation, and we're also lifting up the community of people who are surrounding those individuals, because it takes a type of individual, a community, and a person to be able to help lead them through their pain. Because essentially, you're taking on pains too. You're taking on their stuff with them, and you're committing yourself to a journey with them to see them through to the other side, and that's a heavy weight. And so we want to lift all of you up in this, and we're lifting up ourselves as mom and I come to this conversation together, bringing our own stuff and taking the cover off, as we say here, showing and exposing our relationship and being able to bring our conversations. Y'all, this is the way me and my mom talk all the time. We talk just like this, and we've learned each other, and we've learned some things and continue to learn some things about each other, um, as we continue to learn how to communicate. And communication is not something that comes easy, it's a skill to be learned, and I'm
Humility.
still learning.
It takes
Yes,
humility. It takes
yes,
stepping outside of the role of parent and looking and seeing God, and hearing from Him, and allowing Him to direct us in the moment. Like we could hear, like the scripture says, "Those who have an ear, let them hear." Be
yeah.
still in the midst of your pain and hurt, and you say you're praying. Those people in the church,
Mm-hmm.
if you're a person who believes in prayer and there's an estrangement, pray and be still. Don't go to God with any preconceived notions of what your expectations should be, what it be like, and how you should move. Allow Him to guide you in a new way. He's
Yeah,
doing a new thing, and that's what the healing is going to require. You to become new in your attitude and the way you address and approach your child, your parent, either way. If this is what you're truly desiring, then you're going to have to empty yourself of yourself and truly
mm-hmm.
seek God and be willing to do the hard work. Remember, kisser?
Yes, yes,
And
yes.
I didn't know the power behind that.
That,
But it
yeah.
took me to say, okay, I'm stepping back. I know, I was told to kiss her, and but she doesn't like it.
I
I
like
had to
it.
take all of that out of my mind and say, I'm just going to do this,
Yeah,
and it
yeah,
transformed our relationship. Not that
yeah,
we didn't have a relationship, but not on the level that it went to. The obedience is where the transformation came.
yeah. I'm going to add here. So again, We only give based upon the way in which we show up in the world. And some of you out there might not identify with God in the way that me and my mama identify with God. And that's okay. And I'll say, all is not lost for you as well. And as you begin to do the work and humbly submit yourself to yourself, if that's what you want to call it, whatever higher power that is out there, the universe, whatever you want to call it, whatever it is to you, that the work can be done, that it is here. So if you, even if you say Allah, whoever, whatever it is, there is something greater than you. If you are willing to do the work, to humble yourself, to go inwardly and say, I'm ready to do a new thing, then you will be given the insights to that will lead you to that next step in the journey to get you to where you want to be.
I'm
But you
not knowing it all, child or
that's
parent.
right. That's right.
I don't have to be right. I could be wrong.
One breath at a time.
Yes.
Baby steps. If you can't take a baby step, crawl. It can
Just move.
happen. That's it. It can happen for you. We love each and every one of you. If you guys want to connect with us, please go ahead and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Go ahead and like it, our page, be able to get the insights and the updates. We will be starting our journey group soon in the new year. We are excited for where this is going to go. We can't wait. We hope to see each and every one of you in those spaces. We're ready to do the work. We want to do the work with you. We want you to be able to say, I have a community of people who are rooting for me, wanting me to aspire to my higher. And so we can't wait to do that with you guys.
We are a work in process.
That's it. We love you guys, and we'll see you next week, Wednesday at 5 p.m. in the throne room for Barbershop Conversations with our brother and our friend, Ned. Have a great night.